In just a minute, I'm going to tell you the number one mistake that I see people make over and over again when it comes to planning their retirement. And it often keeps people stuck and spinning their wheels. And here's the kicker. Many of you watching, you're making this mistake and you actually think it's the smart thing to do. But first, my name is Kevin Lum. I'm a certified financial planner, and this channel is dedicated to helping 1 million people retire without worry. If you're watching this video, you're doing something that most people aren't. You're actually thinking about your retirement, and that puts you way ahead of where most people are. But here's what I found. When people begin thinking about the retirement, there are a few beginner mistakes that I see over and over again. And I've had the opportunity to talk with hundreds, maybe thousands of people since starting this YouTube channel, in the comments, via email, via phone, via Zoom. And I see these same mistakes over and over again. And what I've realized is that being interested in retirement planning and being good at retirement planning are two very different things. And so today I'm going to walk you through the 5 biggest beginner mistakes I see people make when they begin planning for retirement. And the third mistake, it's so common that even the smartest, most financially savvy people fall into it without realizing it. In fact, I think the smarter you are, the more susceptible you are to this particular mistake. Now, before moving forward, if you could do me a favor, if you could hit the like button, subscribe, ding that bell, leave a comment, anything to let the algorithms know that you like this content. It's also great for my ego, so I keep making this content week after week. Okay, thanks for humoring me. Let's talk about the mistakes. Okay, the first mistake, and I see this one all the time. I find it especially on retirement forums, and it's some variation of, should I put my money in an index fund or an ETF? Or what about that hot new stock everyone is talking about? Should I invest in Nvidia or whatever, Tesla? Or I've heard dividend stocks are a great way to fund my retirement. Or I've been watching YouTube videos about selling options and I've run the numbers and I think I can retire early by selling cash secured puts. I've heard every version of these. And honestly, they're all fine questions. But the reason this is a beginner mistake is because it's like asking what tool you need before you even know what we're building. Are we building a birdhouse or are we building a mansion? Because the tools are going to be very different. And the thing is, investments are just a tool. But the question is, what are they a tool for? And without first deciding what it is you're building towards or working towards, you'll quickly devolve from investing to gambling. And I could tell you stories. In fact, I had someone reach out the other day. We'll call him Dave. Actually, it's been about 2 years ago. Dave reaches out, says, I don't need your investment advice. I just need tax planning. I found a way to retire. And I was like, that's great. Tell me about it. He said, I have about $200,000 saved and I need $8,000 a month. And I said, well, how are you going to make those numbers work? He said, I've been watching YouTube videos and I'm going to sell cash secured puts. It's a great way to generate income. I'm doing the math in my head. And I was like, that's a 48% annualized return. And he's like, I've already been doing it. I've already been generating the income and I know my numbers are going to work. And I said, how long have you been doing it? He said, I've been doing it for 6 months. You can't fail. Part of me is curious how you did during all the tariff turmoil. Here's the thing. If something seems too good to be true, it probably is. If you could get 48% return risk-free, do you think every hedge fund in the country wouldn't be doing that trade? Now I'm getting a little far afield. The point isn't to talk about, whether you should trade options or not. The point is when you don't begin by first asking, what am I building towards and what am I working towards? And you start with the investments, you can quickly move from investing to gambling. The right way to think about this is actually in reverse. The order that makes the most sense is you do this. What lifestyle do I want to live in retirement? And then what kind of income does that require? What kind of money does that require? And what guaranteed income do I have? And then how do we optimize taxes? Which accounts do I have? Do I have IRAs or taxable accounts? And then against risk. And then once you have that in place, then you can begin to ask the question about the tools. Then you can begin to think about the investments. What investments make sense in the context of this plan? So that's the first beginner mistake that people make, is they start by thinking about the investments before thinking about what they're building towards. The second beginner mistake is thinking there is some magical tax strategy that works for everyone. If you don't believe me, read the comments on some of my videos. People are so dogmatic about whatever their opinion is. No one should do a Roth conversion. That's the dumbest thing ever. Or no one should convert above the 12% tax bracket or whatever. Just read the comments. You'll get a sense of it. Or I often hear something along these lines, right? My buddy did a Roth conversion, so I think I should too. Or my brother-in-law says traditional 401ks are done because taxes are going up. The reality of the matter is tax planning is not one size fits all. And what works brilliantly for your neighbor might be financial suicide for you. Let me give you an example. Let's say I have two, both engineers, both are 45 years old, and both make $150,000 a year. On paper, they look almost identical, but their tax strategies completely different. Client A was planning to move to Florida, a state of no income tax, and also they were a single filer. For him, a contribution to a traditional 401k makes complete sense. Client B, on the other hand, she's planning on staying in California. She's married and she already has a massive pre-tax balance. For her, Roth conversions are essential because her retirement tax rate is going to be higher than it is today. Same age, same income, totally different tax plans. The bottom line is your tax strategy should be a byproduct of your retirement plan, not the driver. And the beginner mistake that I see over and over again is people get caught up on watching 100 videos about Roth conversions. And what really should happen is they should step back and look at Roth conversions as a tool inside of a broader plan. The same way investments are just a tool and you got to ask, what are we building? Roth conversions and your tax plan are also just tools. We've got to know what we're building before we can ask what tools we should use. Okay. Now, mistake number 3, and this is the big one. It's the one I teased at the beginning. And honestly, it is the biggest beginner mistake I see on a consistent basis. And that mistake is, drum roll, it's watching too many YouTube videos about financial planning or about retirement planning. And yes, I get the irony. I am saying this on YouTube. I am incredibly grateful for all of you who watch this channel. In fact, my wife is still surprised that anyone cares about what I have to say. But I am very grateful to all of you who watch this. But one of the biggest beginner mistakes I see people make is that they end up watching too many retirement videos without first figuring out what it is that they're building, or another way of saying this, without first developing a retirement framework. I call them retirement content addicts, and I'm thankful for you. I really am, but it can be detrimental, right? You can quote the 4% rule, you can debate asset allocations, you can explain the mechanics of Roth conversions. But when I ask, how are you actually going to retire? What is your retirement plan? Crickets. It's like watching 500 cooking videos and never making a single meal. Because what happens is you watch a video about claiming Social Security at age 62. Now you decide you need to file early and you start down a rabbit hole and start watching a ton of videos about when to claim Social Security. And then you watch a video about Roth conversions, and now you need to do Roth conversions right away. And so you start down another rabbit hole, and YouTube does this to us, right? You watch one video about Roth conversions, they're going to show you 50 other videos about Roth conversions. And then you see a video that says you should do a bond ladder. And so you start going down another rabbit hole, trying to figure out the mechanics of bond ladders, right? And this keeps happening, but it's not within the context or the framework of a retirement plan. You just hop from one topic to the other because YouTube is serving you these videos, kind of keeping you going down this rabbit hole, but you don't have a coherent framework to make sense of what you're watching. I had a client, a brilliant engineer. He spent 3 years researching retirement. He knew every strategy. He probably knew more about Roth conversions and when to claim Social Security and the break-even points than I did. But his money was sitting in a savings account earning 0.5% because he couldn't decide what to do. He had analysis paralysis. And my guess is that a number of you watching this channel, you suffer from analysis paralysis because there are so many variables. There are so many options. Just take Social Security. Should I claim it at 62? Should I claim it at my full retirement age? Should I delay to age 70? Should both my spouse and I? How does this impact the spousal benefit? What about the survivor benefit? And we could do this with Roth conversions. Should I do it to the top of the 22% bracket? How about my first IRMA bracket? Maybe I should do it at the top of the 24% bracket. Maybe I shouldn't do Roth conversions at all. You get the point. Having a retirement framework or a basic plan will help you begin to make sense of what you're watching and begin to tailor it to your own specific needs. And ultimately, a basic plan that you implement or a plan that you implement is a perfect plan that you never start. So will you perfectly time when you should claim Social Security? Probably not. Will you perfectly time Roth conversions or the right tax bracket? Probably not. There might have been a more optimized option, but the most important thing is taking action and begin building that plan, begin building that framework, and then you can begin making those decisions in the context of that plan. At some point, you've got to stop learning and you need to start building. Now, you can keep watching my videos as much as you like. I really love that you watch. I like the likes, the comments, the interactions. So don't stop watching. Just start building a plan. And I think then all the things you're watching will then help begin to make sense in the context of your retirement framework or your retirement plan. And honestly, this video was inspired by conversations I've had with a few of you over the past couple of weeks, where you've told me basically, I'm overwhelmed by the multitude of choices. And it seems that everyone has a different opinion. And what I've started telling people is that most of the financial professionals you are watching on YouTube, and I know a number of them personally, they are wonderful financial planners. And the content they are giving you is 100% accurate. But financial planning, and maybe the editors can underline this, financial planning is contextual. You need a personalized framework to help make the advice intelligible. Okay, number 4 is building a plan that only works if everything goes right. I see this all the time. People build these beautiful spreadsheets, assuming a 7% rate of return and 2.5% rate of inflation, but they also plan on 0 surprises. And those beautiful detailed spreadsheets fail to take into account the dynamics of real life. What happens if the market crashes during the first few years of your retirement? What happens if inflation rises again and stays at 6%? What happens if health issues force early retirement? Now, you don't need a crystal ball. The future is uncertain. You just need to model the risk. With my clients, we stress test everything. What happens if the market drops 30% in 1 year? What if one spouse passes away early? What if healthcare expenses spike? Let me give you a specific example and kind of walk you through it here. So here we have a client who came to me, happens to be Phil and Claire, who we spent a lot of time with, and they've done some work and they're in great shape. They have a 93% probability of success. I typically feel that anyone with above an 80% probability of success is in pretty great shape. So things are looking good. They're going to retire at age 65. In about 5 years from now, they have a moderate 60-40 portfolio. They've watched all the videos. They're going to wait, delay Social Security so they can maximize their benefit. They're using the retirement spending smile. Everything is looking great. They are ready to step into retirement. And then I look at the plan and I say, have you all built in long-term care costs in this plan? Because 70% of people are going to need long-term care at some point in their life. And so they said, no, but that's a great point. We should put long-term care in. So here we are. We're going to put 2 years of long-term care in for Phil and 2 years for Claire. Now, this is at the national averages for 2 years. So this number is going to get inflated in the future. So it's going to get quite a bit bigger, but let's go ahead and refresh and see what it does to their plan. They have a 93% probability of success. We refresh. And all of a sudden, this plan that looks amazing goes from a smashing success to a 60% probability of success. This is why it's so important to stress test your plan to make sure you've thought of all the variables, because what can look like an incredibly solid retirement plan can have a ticking time bomb somewhere off in the corner. And so you want to make sure that you've considered what all those potential time bombs are and stress test the plan. Okay, the final beginner mistake. And it's actually the opposite of what I just said, right? I just told you you need to stress test it. The other beginner mistake is making every decision from fear. It's smart to plan for risk. You need to stress test your plan, but it's dangerous to let fear run the plan. I've seen way too many people keep all their money in cash because the market is going to crash any day now. I saw a YouTube video. They say the big market, the big one is coming, or load up on annuities or whole life insurance that you don't need, or you never spend a dollar because what if I need that money someday for healthcare? Or they're afraid to spend money because what if I need to spend this money someday, even though they have more money than they can ever spend? Or they claim Social Security early because, well, I heard that it might get cut someday. I talked to someone recently worth millions of dollars whose pension covered all of their living expenses. So the pension and Social Security covered all their living expenses. Plus they had a significant amount of money in their portfolio. but they were terrified of long-term care costs, so they wouldn't spend anything. So his catastrophizing, this fear of what could possibly happen, which didn't make sense in any possible model that we could run, was causing him and his wife to miss their chance to travel while they were both young and healthy. The truth of the matter is, you can stress test your plan, but you can't plan for every disaster. And trying to do so will paralyze you. A good plan prepares you for risk and it gives you levers to pull if something goes wrong. But you don't want to allow fear and emotion to drive the planning process. The goal isn't to eliminate all risk. That's impossible. We can transfer some risk, but we can't eliminate all risk. But it's to take smart, calculated risks that give you the best shot at living the retirement that you've worked so hard for. There you have it, the 5 retirement mistakes that I see over and over again in some variation, right? People who allow fear to drive their planning, people who start with the tools and not the plan, people who have analysis paralysis because they're watching way too many videos and it's consuming way too much information and they don't have a plan and a framework to understand it within. There's never been more information out there. It really hasn't. I mean, the amount of free information that is available to everyone on YouTube is remarkable. And yet, so many people still feel stuck. Why? Because reading about retirement planning or watching videos of retirement planning isn't the same as doing the planning. You don't need another video. You need a plan, one that's built around your goals and your numbers and your timelines. And while I would love for you to hire an advisor, I'd love for you to work with our firm, you don't have to. There are great DIY resources out there and planning tools out there. In fact, I made a video on one of my favorite DIY planning tools, and you can watch that now.